Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. The Warriors are slow to make moves on signing players, but executive Mike Dunleavy Jr. is in talks with 4 players, and they will likely be the Warriors' reinforcements. DeAnthony Melton, Gary Payton II, and Al Horford are 3 players who depend solely on resolving the Jonathan Kuminga situation, and these 3 players will be signed. And who would be the 4th player? Jonathan Kuminga himself, if he accepts the salary proposed by the Warriors. It's been a slow offseason in Golden State, to say the least. After taking down the second-seeded Houston Rockets in the first round, the Warriors' season was derailed after Steph Curry went down with an injury in the second round against the Houston Rockets, leading to their 5-game series defeat. During that series against the Timberwolves, the Warriors were able to see what they had in Jonathan Kuminga, a promising sign after it appeared the forward was all but gone this offseason. However, as the month of September begins, Kuminga has yet to agree to a deal with Golden State, and training camp inches closer. Even though Kuminga has restricted Golden State from making free agency deals with other players, that doesn't mean moves aren't to come after Kuminga and Golden State find a resolution. Recently, Bleacher Report's Eric Pincus predicted where the top 10 remaining free agents will end up, penciling in predictions for 4 players to go to Golden State. The first name mentioned by Pincus was ex-Warriors guard DeAnthony Melton, who began last season on the team before being traded for Dennis Schroeder. Melton suffered a season-ending injury at the beginning of the year, making him expendable in a trade for Golden State. Given he's coming off a major injury, a veteran's minimum deal should be the expectation. Another Warriors guard was mentioned next, with Gary Payton II also expected to return. Payton was not traded last season, as he actually posted one of his most impressive offensive stretches of his career last season after the All-Star break. An elite defender, it seems as though staying in Golden State makes the most sense for him. The most talked about name for Golden State this offseason, in terms of outside free agency signings, has been Boston Celtics center Al Horford. Despite being 39 years old, Horford can still bring value as a high IQ defender and stretch big for Golden State. Quentin Post did wonders for the team last year as a stretch big, and Horford should do the same, assuming he signs. As for the last prediction, Pincus mentioned he also expects Kuminga to return to Golden State. His options are limited, as a sign-and-trade would be the only way he'd start the season on another team. However, Pincus believes that Kuminga will settle with accepting the 2-year, $45 million offer from the team in the end. Buddy Hield has painfully obvious role to take on for the Warriors next season. He must become an elite catch-and-shoot threat. As the Golden State Warriors have awaited a resolution to their lingering Jonathan Kuminga saga this offseason, their apparent interests in free agency have primarily centered around veteran guards to help shore up their relatively thin backcourt. Yet, at the same time, their unwillingness to move Buddy Hield in order to facilitate a sign-and-trade for Kuminga signifies how they perceive his importance to the rotation, and, in order for him to fill the role they envision for him, he must continue to lean even further into his catch-and-shoot abilities. Last season with Golden State, Hield was one of the team's best shooters, but his inconsistencies and cold streaks at times prevented him from being a true difference-maker on the roster. Therefore, if the team is going to surround him with playmakers and perimeter defenders, Hield must focus solely on hitting his shots. Buddy Hield must be an elite catch-and-shoot player for the Warriors' plans to work. Last season, through 82 games with the Warriors, Hield was often one of the team's best scorers, averaging 11.1 points, 3.2 rebounds, and 1.6 assists while shooting 37% from three-point range. While he saw stretches at the starting shooting guard spot for the team, the hot and cold nature of his perimeter shot forced him largely into a role as a bench shooting threat, a spot that would be ideal for him if the organization continues its pursuit of guards this offseason. Yet, even beyond the streaky shooting, there was a further oddity in his stats last season. Across the 2024-25 season, Hield took a total of 786 shot attempts, 549 of which were three-point attempts. Yet, on catch-and-shoot threes, Hield shot 39%, well above his total mark on three-pointers. Yet, on pull-up three-pointers, Hield shot an abysmal 31.9%. While a large gap between these two categories is not unusual about sharpshooters, this signifies something important about Hield's game. He is most effective when he can play off-ball with a playmaker and should not be relied upon to create his own shots. If there is a single available free agent who could be trusted to take over playmaking duties for the bench, it would be veteran guard Malcolm Brogdon. Over the past 3 seasons, Brogdon has posted a 25.5 assist percentage, making him the perfect player to pair alongside Hield on the team's bench unit. Nevertheless, if signing Brogdon does not end up being a possibility for Golden State, it is still clear what route they must take with Hield. In order to be the best version of himself, the organization must furnish him with a playmaker to unlock his catch-and-shoot potential. Warriors only have one player who can salvage Jonathan Kuminga's future. The writing is on the wall for the Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga. Even if player and franchise eventually reunite on a new contract in the coming weeks, it will merely be a union of circumstance and will almost assuredly be a short-term one that ends in divorce via trade in the next 12 months. Is there any way that Kuminga's future with the Warriors can be salvaged and actually turn into the decade-long marriage that both parties had previously envisioned? The only hope for that lies in one specific Golden State player, and one that's long advocated for Kuminga as a supremely talented young player in the league. Draymond Green can salvage Jonathan Kuminga's career at the Warriors. Kuminga's stalled contract negotiations with Golden State is just as much about role and playing opportunity than it is the financial details. The young forward understandably wants to spread his wings and become a full-time starter, but those aspirations within the Warrior ecosystem have been blocked by his unwillingness to do some of the role player aspects, and of course the ever-constant presence of franchise legend Draymond Green. If Kuminga and the Warriors retain any possibility of a long-term future together, it will require Green to relinquish the starting power forward role at some point, and perhaps a point that's sooner rather than later. How Green responds to this potential moment will be pivotal. Fortunately, we've already seen a positive response in such circumstances, albeit only briefly, when Kuminga started over the 4x All-Star in a game against the Minnesota Timberwolves on December 7 last season. Kuminga had come off a game-winning 33-point performance the night before against the Houston Rockets, with Green and Stephen Curry sitting on the sidelines. The veteran was fine with the decision, having initially taken the role off David Lee when he was in the opposite position over 10 years earlier. So if Kuminga's, opportunity goes through me, then it is what it is. He earned the opportunity. He played extremely well, Thursday, Green told reporters. You want to give that another look, or 2 or 3 or 4 or however long. If it works, then you continue with it. It didn't work though, and the two were swapped back as if it never actually happened in the first place. The bigger question becomes how Green responds if or when it happens again, and particularly if it becomes a permanent arrangement. Giving Kuminga a full-time starting role is the only way his career with the Warriors could possibly stem beyond the next year. Of course, he has to earn that and actually win the position off Green, but the fluidity and ease in which it takes place is still very much dependent on the former Defensive Player of the Year. Superstar forward holds the key to Warriors trading for Trey Murphy 3. What will Zion serve up next season? The Golden State Warriors might have expressed trade interest in Trey Murphy 3 this summer, but the chances of a deal with the New Orleans Pelicans will likely be dictated by another player, Zion Williamson. The former number 1 overall pick is still the key to unlocking which direction the Pelicans ultimately want to go, whether they're determined to get back to the playoffs, or whether they understand the need for a rebuild. Zion Williamson could dictate a Trey Murphy 3 trade to the Warriors. New Orleans may have already headed towards a rebuild had Williamson held value in the trade market, yet right now no team is giving up value for someone who's played more than 30 games just twice in 6 seasons. That could change quickly if Williamson bursts out of the blocks next season, though that might just as easily convince the Pelicans to keep the explosive forward. Staff at ESPN recently voted and declared that Williamson would be the next superstar to request a trade from their current team, but that doesn't help New Orleans if fitness and injury concerns continue to persist. Perhaps the most interesting part of this is Williamson's contract. He's got $42.20 and $44.9 million remaining on his deal over the next 2 years, yet they're both non-guaranteed and are tied to specific measures in relation to games played and his weight at various points of the season. For a team who has never paid the luxury tax, Williamson's contract is going to mean a lot for what happens elsewhere on the New Orleans roster. If it becomes obvious that the 25-year-old's contract will become guaranteed, then their hopes of shedding salary while acquiring real value may lay in Murphy, who is about to start a 4-year, $112 million extension. There's also the complicated element of the Pelicans having relinquished their 2026 first-round pick, eliminating their ability to tank next season and reducing their desire to make a trade that would reduce their competitiveness. So, what exactly do the Warriors need from Williamson in order for the Pelicans to consider the possibility of trading Murphy? Ideally, a situation where Williamson hits his contract triggers, yet doesn't play well enough to catapult New Orleans up the standings or his own value to a point where a rival team is willing to surrender serious assets to acquire him. That might leave the Pelicans stuck in a big enough hole to consider something drastic, which is just what trading Murphy to the Warriors would be given his stature as a rising star of the league at just 25 years old. Warriors have crystal-clear Jonathan Kuminga move after latest free agency signing. Thanasis Antetokounmpo became the latest player taken off the free agency market on Sunday, with his return to the Milwaukee Bucks leaving the Golden State Warriors with an obvious next move in regard to Jonathan Kuminga. Thanasis' return signals that his younger brother and superstar forward Giannis will remain with the Bucks to start the season, something that should actually come as a positive to the Warriors given their lack of flexibility and roster clarity would have made it difficult to trade for the 2x MVP had he become available. Things might be a little more flexible for the Warriors if Antetokounmpo reconsiders his future mid-season or in 12 months' time, but only if they secure Kuminga to a contract that would require them to soften their stance in current free agency negotiations. Warriors must guarantee second year and offer to Jonathan Kuminga. Right now Golden State haven't been willing to go beyond a 2-year, $45 million offer to Kuminga that includes a second-year team option. Now, let's consider for a second that trading for Antetokounmpo is still the absolute dream, and that the very obvious uncertainty that existed in Milwaukee this offseason is enough proof that it could still rise into reality at some point. If that were to happen mid-season, the Warriors will want the Bucks to view Kuminga as an asset rather than the idea of expiring salary. Therefore, what is the harm in guaranteeing that second season if it means the young forward accepts the contract? Milwaukee almost certainly wouldn't let Kuminga walk as a free agent next season if he was part of an Antetokounmpo trade. There's also an argument to be made that Golden State should bump up their offer to Kuminga by a few million if they hope to land Antetokounmpo or any other player making $50 million or more next season. The current $22.5 million per year offer that's been presented is still over $30 million shy of Antetokounmpo's contract for next season, meaning the Warriors would likely have to include veteran forward Draymond Green along with Brandon Podziemski and all their future picks to even get in the conversation. If Kuminga's contract goes a little higher, obviously that's less money elsewhere that Golden State would need to find to match salaries. Of course, it's about finding a balance and threading the needle because you don't want to go too high where Kuminga's value suddenly drops significantly because he's viewed as being on a bad contract. It's all hypothetical anyway given Antetokounmpo has seemingly recommitted his future to the Bucks for the moment, but don't think for a second that the Warriors will stop monitoring the situation in Milwaukee and prepare themselves accordingly for anything that may happen.